Good day! In today's lesson, we will be dealing with identifying clauses. So what is a clause? When we say clause, it is a group of words that has a subject and predicate. When we say subject, it is the doer of the action or the one being talked about in the sentence. So usually a subject is a noun or pronoun. Then a noun is a name of a person, place, thing, events, or ideas. Example, name of a person, Anna. Teacher, name of a place, Boracay, name of a thing, books, name of an event, birthday. So those are nouns. On the other hand, pronoun is used to replace a noun. Example, he, she, it, they, we, us, mine, you, and so on. Now, how about the predicate? When we say predicate, it tells something about the subject. And usually predicates are verbs. So when we say verb, it is an action verb. Example, write, read, climb, jump, dance, sing, and so on. So since you already know what subject and predicates are, let's have an example of a clause with subject and predicate. So example, Carla cooked the fish. So our subject here would be Carla because she's a noun or a name of a person. She's the doer of the action. If you are going to ask, who cooked the fish? The answer is Carla. So Carla would be our subject. How about our predicate? So our predicate here is the word cook because it is a verb, an action verb. It tells something about the subject. If we are going to ask, what did Carla do? The answer is, she cooked the fish. Now there are two kinds of clause that we are going to discuss today. So we have independent clause, which is also called as the main clause. And we also have the dependent clause, also called as subordinate clause. Now what is an independent clause? So independent clause is a subject and predicate and can stand alone as a sentence, meaning it expresses a complete thought. Our example earlier is an example of independent clause because we have the subject Carla and the predicate cook, and the sentence expressed is a complete thought. I have here another examples of an independent clause. So the first one is Leonard kicks the ball. Independent clause has a subject. So our subject here would be Leonard because he is the doer of the action. So if you are going to ask, who kicked the ball? The answer is, it is Leonard. An independent clause has a predicate. So our predicate here is the word kicks because it is a verb, an action verb. It tells something about the subject. So here, let me ask you a question. Does it express a complete thought? Yes, it expresses a complete thought because we already know who kicks the ball. Next example. He fixed the leaky faucet. So here, our subject would be the pronoun he because he's the doer of the action. If you're going to ask, who fixed the leaky faucet? The answer would be him. And our predicate would be the verb fix because it is an action verb. If we are going to ask, what did he do? So the answer is, he fixed the leaky faucet. And also, the statement, he fixed the leaky faucet, expresses a complete thought because we already know who fixed the leaky faucet. Another example, Joanne teaches science and algebra at the community college. So here it expresses a complete thought because we have the subject, Joanne, the doer of the action, and the predicate, teaches. So those are examples of an independent clause that has a subject and predicate and also can stand alone or expresses a complete thought. Now what is a dependent clause? Dependent clause has a subject and predicate, but it can stand alone as a sentence, meaning it does not express a complete thought. And dependent clause usually begins with subordinating conjunctions or relative pronouns. So what do you mean by that? When we say subordinating conjunction, it is a word that connects an independent clause to a dependent clause. Examples of subordinating conjunctions are although, even though, until, because, since, unless, and so on. So let's have an example of dependent clause with subordinating conjunctions. So first example, although Ashley is a rich kid, she still remains humble. So as you can see here, we use the subordinating conjunction although in our first statement, which is, although Ashley is a rich kid. And our second statement is, she still remains humble. Between the two statements, which do you think expresses an incomplete thought? Okay, so the one which expresses an incomplete thought is the first statement. And what makes it incomplete? Okay, because of the subordinating conjunction, although. So if you're going to read again, although Ashley is a rich kid, the idea is incomplete because we don't know what she became knowing that she is a rich kid. We don't know if she will grow bad or if she will grow smart, something like that. So again, our dependent clause here is although Ashley is a rich kid. And what makes it a dependent clause? Okay, because of the subordinating conjunction, although. Another example, Jerzen can't leave until his mother arrives. So what is the subordinating conjunction used in the sentence? Okay, so we have the word until. Now which part of the statement is the dependent clause? Okay, so the dependent clause is until his mother arrives because it doesn't express a complete thought and it started with the subordinating conjunction until. Next example. I will not wear uniform unless it required by the school. Can you locate which part is the dependent clause? Okay, very good. So the dependent clause here is unless it required by the school because of the subordinating conjunction unless. So this makes the statement have an incomplete thought. Next, another thing that will help you identify if the statement is a dependent clause is when it started with a relative pronoun. So what is a relative pronoun? It is used to connect a clause or phrase to a noun or pronoun. It modifies or describes the noun. Examples of relative pronouns are who, whom, when, where, that, which, whose, and so on. So let's have examples. The driver who ignored the stop sign was careless. So what is the relative pronoun we used here? Okay, so we have the relative pronoun who. Now since we have the relative pronoun who, can you now locate the dependent clause? Okay, so the dependent clause would be who ignored the stop sign was careless. And since we are using relative pronoun, the dependent clause who ignored the stop sign was careless will be now called as an adjective clause. So always remember that if the dependent clause is introduced by a relative pronoun, it means it is now called an adjective clause. Why? It is because in the clause who ignored the stop sign was careless, it modifies or describes the noun driver. So if you're going to ask who ignored the stop sign that was careless, the answer is it is the driver. Another example. Mount Santis of the Alps was the spot where I waved the Philippine flag. So to identify the adjective clause here, you have to locate first the relative pronoun. So because an adjective clause usually started with a relative pronoun. So what is our relative pronoun here? Okay, so the relative pronoun here is the word where. Since we already have the relative pronoun, can you now identify the adjective clause? Okay, so the adjective clause here is where I waved the Philippine flag. And this adjective clause modifies the noun spot. Another example. Never go to a doctor whose office plants have died. To identify the adjective clause, locate first the relative pronoun. So our relative pronoun here is the word whose. Since we have the relative pronoun whose, our adjective clause would be whose office plants have died. And this adjective clause modifies the noun doctor. If we are going to ask whose office plants have died, the answer is the doctor. So that is an adjective clause. So I hope you've learned something from our lesson for today. Thank you.